Today we can definitively say that the Gaddafi regime has come to an end.
The world is a better place with Gaddafi gone.
If you have studied African history, then you must have heard of Muammar Gaddafi, the famous Libyan revolutionist and politician. If not, then learn about him from this video. Muammar Muhammad Abu Munir al-Gaddafi, commonly known as Muammar Gaddafi, was a great African revolutionary leader, born on June 7, 1942 in Qasr Abu Hadi in Libya. Gaddafi led Libya for 42 years, that is, from 1969 to 2011. It is good to note that his rule ended when he was captured and killed on October 20, 2011, after the Battle of Sirte. Many people attached his death to several causes or reasons, but in this video, you shall discover the real reason why he was killed. Gaddafi was captured by the National Transitional Council forces in Libya and was killed after several accusations. Looking at the number of reasons why Muhammad Gaddafi was killed, you might begin to wonder if this was because of excess dictatorship, and if it was, then you might also wonder the type of leadership such a dictator had. Before his death, Muammar Gaddafi went to take refuge in a large drainage pipe, accompanied by a good number of bodyguards. When the National Transitional Council fighters came, they opened fire, which saw the demise of the long-hunted Gaddafi. Here is the real reason why he was killed. As earlier mentioned, Gaddafi was killed after being accused of several actions and attempts, most especially his desire to put forth an African gold-backed currency known as the gold dinar. According to credible and reliable sources, he was not killed for humanitarian purposes, but for power, oil, and money. Gaddafi suffered torture from the Western National Transitional Forces before finally giving up the ghost at the Battle of Sirte. If Gaddafi had succeeded to establish such a monetary system in Africa, the United States of America, Asia, and Europe would have been forced to buy oil and minerals in the African gold-backed currency, which would have tipped up sales. Gaddafi was strongly pushing this agenda via the African Union, especially when he was the chairman in 2009. The idea was greatly turned down by the Western powers because it will devalue their currencies and work negatively on their economies, and as a result they would have less or no control over African countries. In other words, Gaddafi's plans for Africa would have put an end to neocolonialism. NATO's plan to kill Gaddafi is the same as that of Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was assassinated by the US partly because he chose to sell his country's oil in the euro currency at the expense of the United States dollars. Now the United States was scared and skeptical about the instability the gold dinar will cause to its economy. Hussein's decision to sell oil in the euro was a blow to the United States, worsened by the proclamation that the dollar was the currency of the enemy. All these would have brought back another currency war, which in history was very common, especially in intra-Western and Middle East countries. According to the International Monetary Fund's report, Libya's central bank in 2011 possessed an estimated amount of 144 tons of gold in its vaults. Muhammad Gaddafi's plan was to introduce a gold-backed currency, which he previewed that all African and Muslim nations will adopt. Although he had this in mind, he felt it could be some sort of rivalry with the euro and dollars. How the United States got to know about the gold dinar. A senior advisor to the United States President, Sidney Blumenthal, indicated to his Secretary General, Hillary Clinton, through an email that Gaddafi's government was holding 143 tons of gold and similar amounts of silver in their bank. In late March 2011, these stocks were taken to the southwest direction of Libya's border with Niger and Chad. More heat was added to the matter when former French President Nicolas Sarkozy, who also had interest in Libya, learned about the gold and silver that the country had. He also therefore embarked on attacking Libya. Some of Sarkozy's plans was to gain a share in Libyan oil production, to increase their French influence in this country and North Africa, to improve his internal political situation in France, to provide the French military with a chance to regain its position in the world, and to address Gaddafi's plans of freeing the so-called Francophone Africa from the parasitic French control. Hillary Clinton, the then United States Secretary of State, after hearing this, sought to prevent creation of such a currency in Africa. This hard currency would have allowed Africa to shake off the last heavy chains of colonial exploitation in the continent. The allegedly leaked email of Hillary Clinton had far-reaching implications on the fluid state of post-colonial relations with the West. If this is to be likened to something, then it is an eye-opener. Where Africa seeks to build an independent economic structure, the West is seen to try and derail those plans so as to retain its primacy in world affairs. That is why Gaddafi saw an unexpected death due to his desire to get Africa and Muslim states a new currency. If you are just joining us, then you are watching the real reason why Gaddafi was killed. Like the video and share it so it reaches many more Africans. You can also subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell in order not to miss any of our amazing content. Let us talk more about the gold dinar, a groundbreaking dream for Africa. Gaddafi's objective of this new currency was to divert oil revenues towards the state-controlled funds rather than American banks. In other words, it was aimed at stopping the use of the dollar for oil transactions in African countries, most especially Nigeria, Tunisia, Egypt, and Angola. In fact, these countries were ready to change their currencies as soon as the golden dinar was launched. Unfortunately, in March 2011, NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization coalition forces, began a military action in Libya in the name of freedom and humanitarian concerns. Unfortunately, many ignorant Libyans listened and believed the Western media instead of backing their leader. Gaddafi succeeded to rule Libya for over 42 years because he managed to gain support of many Libyan tribes by providing them with free water, almost free gasoline, free health system, as well as cheap and affordable education. Gaddafi's death marked the end of an African dream. Muhammad Gaddafi wanted to stay away from American influence in his oil transactions by using the golden dinar. He launched a project for this currency, and other African nations were ready to give him massive support. This was an African dream, but at the same time, it was going to be a nightmare for Western banking, which greatly benefits the USA and most European countries. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization's forces were involved in Gaddafi's capture, while the Libyan military were also on the ground to enhance defense. The NATO forces opened fire in a pipeline hideout where Gaddafi was seeking refuge, wounding him on the leg and back. According to one of the unnamed National Transitional Council fighters, one of Gaddafi's own loyalists also shot him, apparently to spare him from being captured. Few minutes later, as the fighting continued, Muammar Gaddafi was killed. Several videos related to his death were shown on television and circulated on the internet. The leader was killed alongside his son, Muhtasim Gaddafi, and they were buried a few days after their assassination. Let's look at other reasons that led to the killing of Muammar Gaddafi. Besides all what you have watched about why Muammar Gaddafi was killed, there are also points from credible media sources that facilitated this process. As a strong and very dynamic leader, loved by the people of Libya, there were some things Gaddafi did for the people, which were not pleasing in the eyes of his opponents. 1. In Libya, there was no payment for electricity during Gaddafi's reign. Electricity was free for all citizens. Fuel, education, and healthcare were almost free or close to nothing for most Libyans to afford. 2. With an excellent management of oil revenues, the Libyan state had managed to store hundreds of tons of about 143 tons of gold, according to WikiLeaks, and the same amount of silver. All these resources were going to make Libya the most influential country in Africa, supplanting France, for instance. 3. There were no interest on loans in Libyan banks and state-owned financial enterprises. Loans were given at 0% interest rate by law. 4. Living in a house was a must-have issue for all Libyans. Gaddafi even vowed that his parents would not get a house until everyone in Libya had one. In fact, having a house in Libya was considered a human right. 5. All newly wedded couples in Libya received money from the government to build their new apartments. 6. Necessities were given out freely or at very affordable prices to Libyans to better their lives, amongst others. All these were seen as provocative and dictatorial to those who were not in support of Gaddafi's projects, which at the end culminated to some fighting and subsequent killing of the revolutionary leader of Libya. All these other reasons why Gaddafi was killed are gotten from the Muslim Times media source. Gaddafi even carried out the world's largest irrigation project in Libya, the Great Man-Made River. This project utilized giant pipes to send fresh water from the Nubian sandstone aquifer system fossil aquifer across Libya, and it was fully funded by the Libyan government. No loans from the IMF or China. Unfortunately, NATO forces intentionally and under strict orders destroyed this irrigation system, and even went further to destroy the factory where the pipes for this project were manufactured. This was a project that was aimed at helping Libyans, so why destroy it if your goal is to free the same Libyans? That is how you saw it on this video titled, "The Real Reason Why Gaddafi Was Killed." We hope you now have ample facts to back your doubts after watching. For a quick summary, although Muammar Gaddafi had his own personal shortcomings, what is widely known about him by people in Libya and Africa was that he was at the verge of getting Africa out of external control, as you have just watched. Many sources gave different ideas about the real reason why Gaddafi was killed, which normally were based on what they perceived about the whole situation of establishing a new currency in Africa. Several biographers and observers characterized Gaddafi as a populist. He was well known for appearing on screens severally to answer questions that people asked him. As a highly esteemed figure, Gaddafi dominated Libyan politics for 4 decades and was a subject of a pervasive cult of personalities. He was decorated with several awards and praised for his anti-imperialist stance, support for Arab and then African unity, as well as significant for the development of Libya. Gaddafi transformed Libya into a new socialist state in 1977. He officially adopted a symbolic role in governance, but remained head of both the military and the revolutionary committees responsible for policing and suppressing dissent. We have seen the assassinations of many African leaders who had the mission of freeing their people from Western influence or uniting Africa. Look at the likes of Patrice Lumumba of Congo, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa of Nigeria, and Thomas Sankara, amongst others. History is just repeating itself, only the actors are changing. Africans must avoid external influence and work with their leaders to foster development in their countries. If this video was an interesting one to you, then please give it a like. What impact do you think the death of Gaddafi has imposed on Africa? Do you think that Libyans made a very big mistake to stand against Gaddafi when he needed them the most? Which African leader now can be bold enough to do what Gaddafi was doing for Africa? Did Gaddafi's African gold dinar dream die with him? These are questions that our African leaders need to answer. Thanks for watching, and see you in our next video.